Hello folks, it's been quite a long time since I've posted an update on the Himalayan. I've actually met a few people out on the road and a couple of people at the Adventure Bike Riders Festival 2024 who recognised the bike and obviously from following me on the channel and was wondering how things are going, so I thought I'd produce a bit of an update on the Himalayan. Well, here she is, still going, I would say pretty well, still gets ridden pretty hard. I've just had a ride up to the local forest up around my neck of the woods, and what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of an update on how well the bike's been running for the last few years, in particular last year, and just some of the work that I've had done on it to keep this thing running as good as it has been. So we did the Adventure Bike Rider Festival again this year. So we went down for 4 days, rode down on the Himmy with the luggage on, had a good few laps of the adventure trail. The only issue we had was with the gear select, which I'll talk about as I walk around the bike. The main issues we've had, I say we, or me in particular, is we discovered we had a leaky head gasket, which was noticeable when I was examining the exhaust header. So I thought I had a leaky exhaust. I thought the exhaust header was continually coming loose. And it wasn't until I blipped the throttle that I noticed a puff of smoke come from the head gasket. So again, I'll talk about that as we look around the bike. So regards the poor performance of the bike is running the stock ECU, no booster plug. I'm currently running the paper filter, but I mix between the paper filter and a foam filter. So at the moment I'm running the paper filter. This is the stock intake, and what I've done is I've cut the snorkel off because the snorkel's quite restricted, and I've rounded that off with a Dremel, so there's like a nice rounded radius on the intake. It's not as loud as the DNA intake plate, and it's you know, like I say, it just removes that restriction and it does make a difference. The most important part of this is this bit of plastic here that runs around, so it runs pretty much around the back of the airbox and down there. The reason we fitted that, and it does actually work wonders, this is when we go through water, because without that, what happens is water comes through past the engine and through this back of this tube here into the airbox. And without that bit of plastic there, water just runs through here and obviously is exposed into the air intake. The other bit of plastic that we have is here from the back wheel. So there's an air gap there, and obviously on the cover, we've drilled a couple of holes on the cover. So excuse the state of the cover, like I say, it's had a bit of a arduous life, but we've got a hole here, 20mm hole there, and at the back, and obviously a hole in the bottom. And I've gone through some quite deep water, and that setup there does keep the water out. So not too much of a problem in the summer or the spring, but certainly come the winter, keeps the water out of that cavity behind that box. I've also put a bit of a lump in there with the hot air gun, a bit of a bulge just to give a bit more of a clearance. Trivial stuff, but it does make a difference. So that's the air intake side of things. While I'm on this side here, when I was at the ABR, the bush in this gear selector totally failed. So the gear linkage was all over the place and I couldn't get gear properly and it jammed up. Ordered a new one, and what I've discovered is that I think some point in the Himalayan's history they updated the design. So this replacement is wider. So the bush is a lot wider than the original one that I took off. So they've obviously had problems with this in development. And also the bolt is slightly different because it has O-rings on this bolt to keep the grease in. So they've had a little bit of a think about, it would appear that they've had problems with the linkage on the very early Himis, the BS4. My friend's got a BS4, he's got a 2022 model, this is a 2018 model, and his BS4 has got the later gear linkage. So if you've got an early Himi and your gear linkage is waggling around terribly and you don't have, you can recognise it by that bolt there, it's got quite a wide shoulder on that bolt. The stock one is more countersunk, but if you have the earlier gear linkage and you find that you're getting a bit of play in there, then that was not a lot of money. I think that was like 30 quid, I think, for the whole thing from India, from Royal Enfield. So it's worth an update. So yeah, so tyre wise, we're running the MT21 Rallycross. These are Pirellis, and these are knobbly, they are noisy, but they are very good dual sport tyres, lasting very well on the tarmac, although a bit noisy. Handles pretty good as well, to be fair. An excellent off-road. So the Rallycross MT21s, I've got those on the rear and I've got those on the front as well, and they make a great difference. Up on the cockpit, you'll see I haven't got I've taken my big fender off for now, purely for looks. I do think the Himi looks neat with the stock fender on, but that's no good in the winter because the suspension, obviously the forks are a little bit longer. We get the front spray that we get off the wheel just bypasses that fender and hits the headlight. So when it's raining, that's no good at all. So I'll probably end up either extending that with a bit of viscreen or something, but I'll worry about that when it gets a bit more wetter. Yeah, the head gasket. So basically, the head gasket did blow. It did go. It was a faint blow. It was more near the front, so it was just above the exhaust joint, and it looks to me like it's just been getting hot. Now, it was a really easy job to change. I think the head gasket was 20-30 quid. Obviously, I was running it a long time with a blown head gasket. It was running okay, but I now realise it was down on power, as you would expect. So now, obviously, it's running a lot better. And there's a tiny weep on the rocker cover, a bit of oil on there now, because obviously when I've put the head back on, I haven't quite sealed the cam cover. So, but that's trivial, it's tiny. I mean, that's after a couple of thousand miles. There's a little bit wet of oil. I'm not overly worried about that. Exhaust wise, we've got the stock downpipe running the Lextech exhaust still. The Lextech exhaust with the air intake as it is and the cam, the tech cam, and the air intake is running really well. I reckon, I haven't had this bike on the rollers, but it's good. You know, it's good. It gets up to 60 very quickly, 65 no problem. It's got loads of grunt on the trails, so it's great, you know, off road. So I'm super stoked with the performance. The Hagon shock was rebuilt. I said that in a previous video. That seems to be lasting okay. And the linkage on the shock at the bottom, they need greasing up quite regularly. Now, I fitted this oiler, which you basically get these off Amazon or eBay for about 20-30 quid. Basically, it's like a piston. You take the lid off, you fill it with oil. Every time you want to oil your chain, they recommend every time you fill your tank up, you turn it half a turn. That forces oil through this tube. And then basically what happens is it comes down and comes along this delivery tube and obviously onto the displaces onto the sprocket. You can just see at the very back there, there's a little nib on the sprocket. A little bit temperamental because the cheap ones, the O-rings, when they sling these together in the factory, I've discovered that the O-rings are a little bit on the small side. So what happens is when you fit them, you'll get a load of oil running down here and you think, oh, the thing's it's a waste of money. But what I found is if you strip them down, they're easy enough. Put some slightly bigger O-rings in there if you can get hold of them, which you get them measured. Let's go to a local engineering stockist and get that seal seal them back up, then actually they do work very well, and it'll give you that longevity on the chain. And the reason why I like this as opposed to the gravity fed oilers is that you force the oil. So when you turn that cap, if there's any crud in the nib on the sprocket, by turning that oiler it will force any crud out and you get a definite lube. So I've definitely noticed a difference on there. Everything's pretty much still the same on the cockpit. My wireless charger, that's just given up the ghost. I think it's the electronics. I think there's water in there. I mean, this bike's been jet washed gosh knows how many times. So I've got another one of those on the order, exactly the same one to put where I put my GPS wireless charger. The headset bearings are holding out. The grease nipple that I fitted down there, every service, every time I do an oil change, I just put every 3,000 miles, I just put the grease gun on there, a couple of pumps of grease, and wait for the grease to come out on the sails. And that is doing the job, and you can see there, you know, they're nice and free, they're springing back, and there's no sort of like play in there. So yeah, mileage wise, what have I got on the mileage? Let's have a look on this thing. Mileage. So 23,900, so nearly 24,000 miles I've got on it. So I bought it with 3,500 miles on it second hand, and I've done some big trips on this. It really has taken me all over the north of the UK, and it keeps going. It's not using any oil. Well, I say that as a tiny amount of oil consumption, which you'd expect from an air cool with a bit of mileage on, but it's not smoking, it's not billowing out. The engine runs smooth. Wheel bearings, we've gone through a couple of wheel bearings, so I think because of the terrain we ride on, and certainly on and off the throttle, certainly gone through sets of wheel bearings on. I've gone through 2 sets on the front, and I think it's 2 sets on the back. Easy enough to change. They're actually the same size bearing, so I mean I can take the wheel off, drift the bearing out, and put a new one in less than 5-10 minutes really. I mean the back wheel's the worst because you've got to faff around getting the chain off, but a really easy thing, you know, really easy to do, you know. It's so keep an eye on those wheel bearings. You know, obviously there's a bit of weight in the rims. The rims aren't the lightest, but I suppose you sacrifice that because they are pretty strong. So you know, with the weight comes the strength. So there we have it, folks. Still got the Hemi. A few people have been asking. 24,000 miles on it. We're just coming to the back end of the season now in the UK. Still a beautiful evening here up near Scarborough, and long may the Hemi continue. I've even thought about keeping my eyes peeled for, you know, a donor Hemi or one that's, you know, an accident crashed one, or just basically for spares, just to keep this one running. But still running, fantastic value for money. Still think they are the best value adventure bike for the money. Yes, there are better bikes around. The competition's catching up. But I think you've got to understand that this isn't a technological bike. This is what I would call a proper traditional motorcycle. Very, very simple to maintain. Very cheap to run. Getting 80 miles to the gallon. I mean, you don't. When you're on the bigger bikes like the GS, you know when you're on a bigger bike because you're forever pulling into a petrol station. On this thing, you know, you fill it up and you forget about it, you know, and then suddenly you realise after a week or so, hang on a minute here, like, you know, I need some fuel. So yeah, really, really good on the pocket. Really good, really, really cheap to run. I'm just trying to think what else has gone wrong with it. So head gasket, that made a big difference. Changing that, I'd expect the performance was better. No ECU upgrade, no booster plug, running the stock or foam air filter on that box. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The swing arm bearings seem to be okay. Getting a little bit of corrosion in the bottom roller bearings on the shock now, so on the shock linkage. So obviously it's expected because it does spend a lot of time in water, especially in the winter. So I'm gonna look out for either a second-hand complete unit or just swap the whole thing nearer the time. I might even look at modifying shock linkage and put some grease nipples in, but we'll see about that. So yeah, okay. So thanks for your time. And like I say, a few people have been asking. Still got the Himalayan, as I've said. Still love it. Still running really strong. Would I get rid of it? No. Would I change it? No. I still think it's a very capable machine because it's good on the trails, but it's also very good on the road, and it's a fun bike to ride. So thanks for watching, folks. Take care, and speak to you soon.